Detention is a high school movie that is, I'd kind of describe it as a John Hughes film if it was raped by a psychotic George Lucas. The origin of the project came when I was meeting up with my friend Mark Palermo from Halifax, Canada, and we were discussing, movies that we liked, and we both had this feeling that we wanted to make something about high school. We didn't know what it was, but at some point I think in a filmmaker's life you've got to address childhood, and so this is my version of a high school movie. This is my version of a personal story of how I feel about what it's like to be young, and what the youth think about, and more importantly, what I think the youth of today is like. We had the script for a while. It took 3 years to write, but I think I took about a year just trying to sell it to different studios, and nobody wanted to do it. Nobody understood it. It was too crazy, too whatever, too unmarketable. So I was in Manchester doing a commercial, and I was coming back on a train to London, and I suddenly realized maybe I should make it myself. And I turned to my producer and I turned to my crew and I said, we're going to start prepping the movie right now, which was actually July 1st. And I also knew that, because schools went back into session, it was going to be impossible to shoot there. We needed to shoot that movie by September, at least the school parts. So, a month and a half after I said, let's start prepping, we were shooting. And we ended up shooting the movie over 2 months, but the first month of it was done before school got back in session. It was a race against time. In choosing my cast, being that this is truly an independent production in that the money is mine for the most part. It comes straight out of my bank account to what you see on the screen, and there's no studio involvement. It's a tricky thing because you're not going to get the mainstream stars that you normally expect. However, Josh Hutcherson, who was just coming off Kids Are All Right, read the script and loved it, and he came on board. So he was my first star. I had an idea for. Actually, Mark and I should stop taking so much credit, Mark and I had an idea for Spencer Locke for this part of Ione, and she was in the Resident Evil films, and she was the only person that we could think of who could play that part, and she immediately said yes, so things started lining up. And then for Verge, I had worked with Dane Cook before on Torque, and he came on board, and so we had, a couple recognizable names and faces, but it freed us up then to cast specifically for the role as opposed to trying to fit squares into circles and things like that. So the rest of the cast are mostly unknowns, and especially our lead actress, Shanley, who, when I went through a bunch of ideas of who could be my lead girl, because she's the main character, one of my fantasies was, why don't I cast the best actress, regardless of name, regardless of box office appeal, regardless of anything, who is the best actress who could bring pathos to the role? And that was Shanley. And because it's my movie and it was my money, I rolled the dice and I went with her, and I'm extraordinarily happy. I casted Shanley because of her audition, which was phenomenal. It was so realistic. The movie has obviously very fantastic elements to it that spread all over the place in different genres and stuff. But it's very important that the actors who play it very straight-faced. We don't, as long, there's elements to the movie that I guess kind of have a wink to it, but I never want it to be like you never take any parts of the movie seriously, but there is definitely sort of a meta feel to the movie. But what was important is that none of the characters should be aware of this. None of the characters should be commenting on it's a movie. They don't exist in a movie, they exist in a real world. And so when it came to the acting, and to accomplish that effect, I needed real actors. And Shanley's audition was so natural. She had a way of taking some of our complex dialogue and just brushing it aside, and just saying it. And that was awesome. And then on top, I went through a further audition process where I wanted to see if you could take that naturalism and the way that she had a sort of, attitude that she didn't care, and then make her care, because the character has to at some point. And she nailed that. And then ultimately, I also had a third aspect to it too. I was like, I didn't want her to be outwardly sexy, because I just think that's wrong for an 18-year-old girl. Our girl is supposed to be an underdog. So obviously Shanley is not an unattractive girl, but can she essentially be attractive without putting it so far up in front of the camera? And she just has this sort of slow burn, which I think a lot of boys are gonna like. She's definitely the girl next door that is more attractive than she thinks she is.